It's time to go beyond the headlines, cause I don't put in overtime just so I can headline, okay. Now it's Fox Sports, I'm live with Renee. Going hard every day, sports rapping every play. Different segments for your favorites, coming at you daily. With positive vibes, yeah, we some game changers. Basketball, football, soccer, with different interviews, you never know who may pop up. Listen, only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington.
The first round of the Audi MLS Cup Playoffs are done and over with as of this past weekend. So joining us on Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington to recap that and get into what's going on in the next round, we've got Andrew Wiebe, host at Extra Time, MLS columnist, and co-host of Instant Replay. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Renee. There is nothing at this point that I would rather talk about than the MLS Cup playoffs because, wow, just wow, absolute wild first weekend. So tell me where you want to go, and I'm ready.
Absolutely. I mean, the first round did not disappoint. The games that we saw this past weekend, just for anybody that missed any of the results, we had Atlanta beating New England 1-0. Seattle knocked off FC Dallas 4-3 in a crazy game. Toronto FC beat DC United 5-1. Real Salt Lake defeated the Timbers 2-1. And then Sunday, we had the Union and the Red Bulls, and what I knew was going to be a close one, 4-3. The Union wins that one, and LA Galaxy completely defeated Minnesota 2-1 to complete the weekend. So it was quite a weekend. Round one, it's playoff time. We expected the yellow cards, a red card, the excitement, the controversial calls. What are your immediate takeaways from this past weekend from what you saw in the games?
So I think just the number one takeaway is the ramp-up of the intensity, of the stakes, of the way that all these teams approached it. And if you look at those results, what you'll notice is that it was essentially 5 one-goal games and then one game that went to extra time and turned out to be 5-1 after Toronto FC absolutely laid it on DC United. So much so that Wayne Rooney at halftime of extra time put his hand up and was like, you know what, I don't think I want to be a part of this anymore. Forget it. I'm off to Derby County. There's no way we're winning this game. Get me off the pitch. I mean, the level of competitiveness, the level of intensity, this is what everyone was hoping for with this new format change. You go to single elimination, and I know in the past in the knockout round it was single elimination as well, but there was just something about this, something about these games, something about the weekend, something in the air, and no, it wasn't just the awful weather that was ramping things up. Teams just threw caution to the wind, teams that I didn't think would throw caution to the wind. I thought the Seattle Sounders, Atlanta United at home with talent advantages would sort of sit back and let their talent win these games, and they didn't. The games were open. The games were the sort that you watch them with friends, and you're looking at each other, you're pushing each other, you're yelling, you're screaming, you're jumping up and down. Here at the MLS studios in Manhattan, we were literally running in circles at times, whether it be a dramatic goal, a dramatic call, a dramatic no call, what have you. It was just everything that you could have hoped for if you love soccer, if you love Major League Soccer, if you love sort of the playoff format in general. And now it's all about what this next round might bring. I'm just hoping that this is the start of something more. You get 27 goals in 6 games. You get a free hour of soccer via extra time. I mean, if you couldn't have gotten any more. I can't imagine a scenario other than maybe Zlatan and Joseph Martinez not disappearing in which this first weekend could have been better.
Yeah, and that's you touch on a lot of good points, and I think something that a lot of us were really wondering as we were getting into this is how the format change would impact the playoffs. And if you look at the closeness of every game, and also, as you mentioned, the intensity of every game, you know, it's one thing to have close games. It's not always easy to score, period. Especially once you get into playoffs, defenses are tightening up. Teams are a lot more organized because it's especially now with the single-game elimination, one and done. So you expect closeness in that perspective, but when you look at between the 8 teams also how close it was, the intensity, you know, the way that guys were laying it all out on the field to do whatever it took to help their team win, that's what makes it so exciting, you know? And so I don't know if there's really any true surprises in terms of results because it really was anybody's game down to, you know, extra time, getting into overtime. That's when we really still even saw it could still be anybody's game. So
absolutely.
That is the excitement and the beauty of it.
Yeah, I think you also have to be excited. Yeah, I think you have to be super excited about the fact that the regular season, at least in theory here, mattered because teams that got the higher seed, teams that had a better record in the regular season, teams that got the opportunity to host this one-off took advantage of that outside of Minnesota United. And that was always the one that you kind of looked at and said, oh, boy, it's the Galaxy. I know they haven't looked good for the better part of this season, but they have Zlatan. They have better talent in the attacking side of the field, so maybe that they could win. But we need this. We need the playoffs to bear out regular season results in so many ways because we need more teams to play like this as they're playing in the playoffs in the regular season. That will elevate Major League Soccer from what I already think is a pretty good 7-8 month season to one that you just can't tear your eyes away from. And I want to go back to what you were saying about the way that people approach this. And I want to just shine a light on Alejandro Bedoya because in case people listening did not watch this game, Bedoya had a real quad injury heading into this game. He missed the final day of the regular season, a huge match for the Union. He had to be taken out of their previous game, which was a big loss for them. And the Union had never in their history won a playoff game. In fact, I would go so far as to say they've never in their history won an important game. They've lost all 3 U.S. Open Cup finals they've been in. They've lost all 4 playoff games until Sunday that they had been in. And they have the Red Bulls in town. They have a packed house. They have an opportunity to show their fans that this club has changed. And for the first half, it didn't look at all like the club had changed. It's 3-1 Red Bulls. Andre Blake's dropping the ball. But then you have these sort of iconic moments. And I turned to somebody yesterday and I said, this is like the bloody sock. You know, this is like the flu game. Like Alejandro Bedoya scores. Looks like he probably redoes his hamstring on that play. And then it's 3-1. And then he guts out 90 more minutes into extra time, and you can tell that he can barely run. He can barely pass the ball 10 yards. And it matters so much to him. This is why he came to the Union, for these games, for these moments, to make a difference, to push this team over the top, and to have it happen and have them win 4-3 in the manner that they did with Marco Fabian and Elsinho and Papa Picault dunking on Tim Parker. It was this... in my opinion, and I'm just talking about it, I feel my heart rate rising. It was one of the most iconic games of MLS playoff history. It was one that we will remember forever, I think.
Yeah, that takes me perfectly into my next question. As we look back on the 6 games that we saw this past weekend, you know, you talked about how close these games were and how intense they were. When we get to the playoffs, that's when big players step up in the right moment. You know, big players make big plays to help their team get a win. You talk about Alejandro Bedoya with the Philadelphia Union. Another play that immediately comes to mind, Jordan Morris getting a hat trick for the Seattle Sounders. I mean, who are your players that you take away from the past weekend that really stepped up and really carried their team? And it could maybe be an unsung player. It doesn't have to necessarily be someone that got their team the game-winning goal. Maybe it was someone that, as you mentioned with Bedoya, that aside from scoring, also did the little things. You know, who are those players that you pull away from this past weekend?
I think Jordan Morris is a great call, but he's more, as you said, sort of on that forefront. If the Sounders are going to go try to win another MLS Cup, he's got to be this player. Maybe not hat-trick Jordan Morris, because we'd never seen that before, but certainly goal-dangerous Jordan Morris. And I'm going to point you towards Atlanta United. I know it's kind of weird to look at the defending champions and say, oh, okay, well, they're the ones that had the unsung hero, but there are 2 guys. The first is Franco Escobar, who only seems to score in the playoffs, 3 goals in 6 matches. He gets the game winner against the Reds. But it's really his backline mate, Michael Parkhurst, who was the captain of this team last year when they won MLS Cup, who made the huge play in MLS Cup to tackle the ball away from Jeremy Abobasi and feed Joseph Martinez for the first goal in MLS Cup. But he wasn't expected to play a huge role in these playoffs. Miles Robinson, this guy that's pushing his way into the U.S. national team, one of the most talented young defenders in this continent right now, gets hurt, does his hamstring with the U.S. national team, and the logic around the league is kind of like, oh, man, the way that Atlanta play, the way that they press and push and try to dominate teams is so reliant on Miles Robinson. What will they do? Can Michael Parkhurst, who's played a limited role this year and is retiring at the end of the season, whenever it is for Atlanta United, that'll be it for him. Can he fill those shoes? And it was a question mark. And then he went out there, and he looked like a best 11 player. Like, you can't get by the guy. He's reading it before the Revs can do anything in the final third. He's making the big tackles. He's winning the foot races you don't expect him to win. And then you have the ugly moment. It goes back to another injury. I mean, in the final seconds of the game, Atlanta up 1-0, to have him have that dislocated shoulder and be on the field, and you see the trainers trying to put it back in, and they can't get it back in, and you're feeling for Michael Parkhurst in that moment, because you can't help but think, is this his final moment as a professional?
Right.
Laying on the turf, arm out, in extreme pain, wondering if maybe this is the final hurrah for him, and I hope it's not. He posted on Instagram his stories. That's the way media works these days. You know, the players, they do half the reporting on their own. Him at his kitchen table eating sushi, saying, guys, look, I'm okay. Now, will that be okay for Thursday, or will that be okay for the conference finals if they get that far, or will that be okay for MLS Cup? We have no idea. Same for Miles Robinson. But just like Alejandro Bedoya, Michael Parker is the guy who saw the occasion, stepped up to the occasion, and was just simply a warrior in this first weekend.
Yeah, I think, well, I like your comment about the way that social media and everything works nowadays. Us reporters, columnists, hosts, anchors, our job is sometimes just simply trolling through social media for those moments where the players basically give us information. So that is, it's always funny to me when I see that. But you hit it right on the head. You know, it's more than just what happens in the 18s. And, of course, it does take a player to have that confidence, to have the ability to be composed around the goal that, you know what, I'm going to put my team on the scoreboard, help us get that win. But there are also those guys, as you mentioned, that, you know, you feel for them. You know, they're exciting to watch because you can see the emotion and the passion and the way that they play, the way they grind it out, the way they're all over the field. So moving forward, as we get into the conference semifinals, you know, round 2, we do have some great games coming up Wednesday and Thursday with Nyrryk, NYCFC versus Toronto, Seattle versus RSL, Atlanta versus the Union, and then LAFC versus LA Galaxy, which I know off the bat is a matchup a lot of people have been waiting for. As we get into the conference semis, and, you know, every game counts that much more, every second, every minute, every play, who are your players to watch moving forward in these key matchups for these teams?
I'll kind of walk you through and go match by match, and there's that much intrigue
Sounds
to be had. And to start with NYCFC Toronto, there can be no bigger player than Josie Altidore, in my opinion, because Toronto FC, though they got past DC United, are coming up against a team that is far, far, far superior to DC and NYCFC, not only on the attacking side but also on the defensive side. DC limited Toronto in this game, and Alejandro Pozuelo, who's an incredible player, incredible signing for Toronto, played sort of a false 9, dropping off that center position. But this is Josie's team when he's healthy, and he needs to be healthy for them to be an MLS Cup winning team. He was not even in the 18 against DC, and my hope is that was precautionary. My hope is he will, at the very least, be in the 18 for this game. If he's not, I think this is NYCFC's game to win. Matricia, Castellanos, Hebert, Maxi Morales, who in most other MLS seasons would be an MVP contender, but this season is nuts, so he wasn't even in the conversation. If you look at NYCFC across the board, literally every position, they're probably top 5 in MLS. So a huge, huge task for Toronto. They need Josie Altidore, and they need Omar Gonzalez to be healthy. He wasn't able to be in the 18 for this one as well. If you look at Seattle RSL, I'm looking squarely at Nico Lodero. He is the magic man. He's the former River Plate number 10. He's the Uruguay international. He's the one that makes the Sounders tick. If Jordan Morris is going to get out in the open field and punish RSL, which I think is probably the best route for them because RSL has been pretty stout defensively, he'll be the one feeding them. And on RSL's side, who is the difference maker? Game to game? Right. I really don't know. It could be Albert Rusnak. It could be Jefferson Savarino. It could be Sam Johnson. It could be Damir Krylock. It could be. But who will it be? It needs to be somebody if they're going to get past Seattle and get to the conference finals. And then on Thursday, which I think is the truly special crop of games, just look squarely at Joseph Martinez in this game against the Union for Atlanta. This is their guy. He said before the playoffs started, don't mess with my money, don't mess with my family, don't mess with my quest to win another MLS Cup. If you do, I will kick you. And I'm pretty sure he was talking about his teammates, not even the opponents. Well, he didn't really show up against the Revs. And I'm not going to say that to his face because I don't want to get kicked, but he has to be Joseph Martinez, and he absolutely was not that player against the Revs. And if he is that, sorry, Philly, you didn't have Kasper Shabilko. Your leading scorer, Alejandro Bedoya, probably won't be 100%. In fact, I can't imagine he would be, and I think Atlanta gets past. And then Oh, boy. Renee, this is the one, right? El Tráfico?
This is the one.
It's what everybody's thinking about. It's what everybody's looking at their bank account saying, oh, can I afford to go to this game? Because on the same night of Lakers-Clippers, the tickets for El Tráfico in the playoffs are blowing that NBA opener out of the water. I mean, it'll take $300, $400 just to get in the building. If you want good seats, be prepared to drop like $4,000. And you know the players in this one. It's Zlatan and it's Carlos Vela, and they've been yapping each other all year about who's having the better season, who's the better player. Zlatan, before that game against Minnesota, said, doesn't even matter what happens in these playoffs. I'm the best player in MLS history. Well, Zlatan, now's the time to prove it. LAFC have never beat you. They have never beat the Galaxy. This is their opportunity to get over the hump, continue to be their boogeyman, and you will continue to write that MLS legacy that has so far been sans playoffs.
Yeah, I think you hit every single matchup right on the head. We've got Josie Altidore and the underdogs against NYCFC. We've got RSL where they're still trying to figure out who is the guy, which as we know when you get to playoffs and you're looking for that key player to step up, who do you turn to? Who's the guy that they're going to be looking to get the ball to? Then we've got Joseph Martinez and what definitely should be a big redemption game as he's rebounding from what was a poor, or not poor, but less than Joseph Martinez.
Let's call it anonymous. How about that? Let's call it anonymous.
Yes, anonymous. That's a great way to put it.
For our personal safety here.
Yes, exactly, just in case he can find us. And then Carlos Vela, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. This doesn't get any better than that. That LA matchup, the rivalry there, the two of the top players in the game facing off. It doesn't get any better than that in the playoffs, no less. So I'm looking forward to it. I know you are, too. I know you're going to be posting and tweeting all about it. So where can our listeners follow you on social media to keep up with all your MLS playoff coverage?
Hey, look, if you want that flood of coverage, because that's what we are giving you, to be honest, on Twitter, at Andrew_Wiebe, Wiebe, and I couldn't emphasize this more. Go follow at MLS, all the highlights, all the results, all the storylines there, as well as MLS Matchday Central. We are just hanging out here at the AT&T MLS studios in Midtown Manhattan. We have pregame and postgame shows before and after every block of games. So if you're trying to follow, you're trying to understand what's happening, we're in the studio with some former pros, some big names. Benny Feilhaber was here for these last couple of shows. Charlie Davies will be with us midweek once again, former U.S. national team player. Sasha Kleshin will be in with us. He was a former MVP candidate with the Red Bulls, now with Orlando City, played with the U.S. national team at Anderlecht and all over MLS and Europe. And then Matt Doyle, Bobby Warshaw, Kalen Carr, and the rest of them, and reporters on site. So we are covering this thing top to bottom. 2 match days down, only 5 more to go. If they're anything like the first 2, it's going to be must-watch stuff. 8 teams left. We'll see. It'll drop down to 4 this week, and then we'll keep on pushing on to MLS Cup on November 10th. So I'm just happy to be along for this ride.
Oh, yes. It's incredible this time of year. It's like a Christmas, soccer Christmas. You just get
it's like a drug, to be honest with you. Yeah, this weekend was like a drug. I feel like I feel a little hungover, to be honest with you.
Oh wow, yeah, I could see that too. And the highs and lows. Okay, maybe I could. Yep. It's an emotional roller coaster for sure.
For sure.
But Andrew, thank you so much for joining the show and shining light on what happened this past weekend and sharing your thoughts on and predictions, or not even predictions. I didn't even get your prediction. All right, let's.
I don't think I was gonna say I think I might have escaped, but.
Who do you have winning it all?
I'm going to just go straight on my bracket. And NYCFC for me, with rest, with the depth they have, with their attacking options and that stout defense, that's going to be the pick for me against Toronto at Citi Field. And then it's Atlanta United. Joseph Martinez is not going to have another game like that. And Philly are so banged up. They put so much into that match against the Red Bulls physically and emotionally. I just think the quick turnaround for them it's too much. They have 1 less day of rest. They have 2 key players injured. Atlanta moves on. They'll still be defending their MLS Cup crown. And then in the Western Conference, LAFC finally get over the hump. The Galaxy, I know they did it against Minnesota, but it was ugly. It wasn't very Zlatan wasn't Zlatan. He looked disinterested. He looked stationary. I don't see the 6th time happening here. It's not the charm. So LAFC move on. The number 1 seed continues on. And then I want to make a case for RSL, but I can't. It's the Sounders. They got the gamers. So in your conference finals, you have Sounders LAFC, an absolute peach of a matchup. On the other side, it's New England it's Atlanta against NYCFC, the top two seeds on both sides. So home field advantage, and the bracket just keeps going chalk, and that'll be a great conference finals, and then we'll see what happens for MLS Cup.
All right, there you have it. We'll hold you to it. Thank you again.
Don't hold anybody to MLS predictions, Renee. That's liable to be bad news for them.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining the show. I really appreciate it.